Now, we're going to be talking about Oliver Barker-Vormawor and that apology to the Appointments Committee yesterday, saying that the intent of his post had never been to disparage them. But the question is, how do we actually deal with this negative public perception that seems to have clouded the work of the Appointments Committee, both past and present? Before we discuss, let's take a report on that.
Finally had its day with activist and lawyer Oliver Barker-Vormawor over those social media comments. The committee members, especially on the MPP side, were furious and pressed Oliver Barker-Vormawor to speak himself and not to be speaking through his lawyer. In fact, as a back and forth ensued, there was this clash between a lawyer for Oliver Barker-Vormawor, Nana Tudadzi, an experienced politician himself, and former chief of staff under the erstwhile Rawlings administration. Here is what panned out at the committee.
We made that post but it gave a certain reason and indicate that if that statement appears or seems to have,
Counsel, with the greatest respect, as we sit here, very respected senior citizens of this country are engaging us. We were initially divided on this matter. Please help your client. It's not a matter of, Leonard, we respect you. You know, it's because I'm sure he knows why he chose you. You are a respected counsel. This issue of if, are you rendering an unqualified apology? If not, let's close this matter. Are you apologizing and are you going to pull it down and all? Let's close this matter because the speaker is of the view that we should manage this thing, and that is why we are managing. But you cannot continue. We give you the chance 50 years at the bar. This at the bar. No, Mr. Nana Tudadzi.
I would have protest.
No, you can protest if you want us to have no, because I've opened the window for us to solve this matter. This is not an NDC MPP matter. No, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, with the greatest respect, I am no. We want to solve it, but this is not a matter of 10 years at the bar, 50 years at the bar.
Oliver Barker-Vormawor then attempted to read a prepared speech in which he tried to lay out the basis for that post. But the committee were not interested in that, except to impress on him to offer his formal apologies for those comments, which Oliver Barker-Vormawor obliged.
I want to begin by reiterating my utmost respect for the committee and its constitutional role and the job or task it has to vet persons to high office in this country. At no point did I accuse the chair of this committee or members of the NDC for having asked for or to be given money or to submit themselves to oral. The misinformation, as I said, was appeared on a Facebook post under one NPP Projects Bureau. In fact, there's evidence that 4 days ago when the post appeared, I commented on it as being fake. Unfortunately, I must also address the claim that it is a notorious fact that he's a member of the NDC. In fact, I must say that the victory of the NDC, now everybody says they are NDC members. But this is completely untrue. I have not been a member of the NDC in the past. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Manasseh Azure published a book, The President Ghana Never Got. This was his words in the book.
Please, are you going to render apology? We are not interested in what Manasseh has said in the past. Please.
Mr. Manasseh said, Muntaka never mentioned that the only cash that came to the appointment
Mr.
committee...
Oliver Barker-Vormawor, are you going to do justification or you want to render an apology and we close this meeting?
If the committee resolves that the context of the post is irrelevant to the commission, the question here, I'm happy to proceed as the committee has directed. Now,
proceed as the committee has directed.
Mr. Chair, I am saying here clearly that my post was not intended to disparage members of the committee, and I have not intended to say that members of this committee have received or demanded bribes from various individuals. And for those reasons, I apologize.
After this apology and retraction, the committee then discharged Oliver Barker-Vormawor.
Your client, having apologized, is hereby discharged.
Very grateful. the patience and tolerance.
Thank you very much for attending upon the committee and clarifying issue.
Still on the appointment committee, though, Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagwin has not been enthused about how the committee is going about its work. Alban Bagwin said that it appeared the committee was not following the rules laid out for its work.
Respect is earned. Please. Appointments Committee. We have crafted rules of how Appointments Committee should conduct the business of public hearing. That is the term. I'm not too sure there's reference to those rules in what I am witnessing myself.
The committee has not started today to vet nominees, apart from hearing from Oliver Barker-Vormawor. We expect that on Thursday, the committee will resume its public hearings and continue to vet. With the advertisement already outside, we expect Sabolo Kujito Blakwa, the designate for Foreign Affairs, Minister designate for Communication, also Sam George, and other regional ministerial nominees to also appear before the vetting committee and respond to questions. Reporting for Joy News, Kweku Asante, Parliament House, Accra.
Well, let's discuss this. Joining us via Zoom is Samuel Bing, Executive Director, Parliamentary Network Africa. Mr. Bing, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.
Right. We'll discuss that apology, the integrity of the appointment committee, and also the Speaker's position on whether or not it was the appointment committee that should have taken that on. But let's start with a bit of background. Can you give us a background in terms of how we got to this point? And have there been instances where the appointments committee have come under question in terms of their integrity?
Well, yes, there's been many instances where the appointments committee, just like many parliamentary committees, have come some public scrutiny so far as integrity is concerned, so far as issues of allegations of bribery and money collections and what have you are concerned. And that is why I am of the considered opinion that this appointments committee, upon seeing these publications, wanted to nip the situation in the bud and deal with it right from the onset. Now, what they try to do with that, considering the limitations that currently exist in Parliament, and when I say limitations, I mean the non-existence of a properly constituted privileges and immunities committee, as it's currently named. They decided that they wanted to use the route of calling the gentleman, Mr. Vormawor, as a witness of the committee. Every committee of Parliament is clothed with the power to invite witnesses to assist the committee in discharging its duties. These witnesses could be expert witnesses who are coming to provide expertise to the committee. They could be witnesses who are coming to answer specific questions. They could be witnesses who are doing different kinds of things for the committee. So he as a witness, and this time around, not as somebody who's been charged for contempt. And I think that that distinction needs to be made, because the Committee on Appointments does not have the power to haul people before it for contempt. As a witness, he came and he sought to provide details around what it is that he altered and what it is that he did not alter, and eventually apologized. And I think that's like the background to this. But ultimately, what this shows is that we have a parliament that is pretty worried about its reputation. And once it is worried about its reputation and integrity, it must be seen to be doing things right and doing the right things towards remedying the injured reputation. And that includes deliberately as an institution, going into the issues of why people perceive it that way, what has happened in the past, what are the public perceptions. There may probably even be instances where maybe it is not the members of Parliament themselves who are demanded, but people, because they think that this is the way to go, are offering these kinds of things. Why are people offering? What have they heard? And based on all of these findings, perhaps come up with some thorough arrangements, codes of conduct, internal policy documents around MPs and how they deal with such matters. That will be a good legacy that can be left behind by Speaker Babin, who in the past, as a member himself, has accused the House of bribe taking, and a leader of government business, Mr. Ayariga, who has also been a victim, so to speak, of these circumstances.
You mentioned Parliament deliberately trying to turn that image around, right? What would that look like? Is that what the appointment committee sought to do? And is that the right way to go?
Well, to an extent, that's what they sought to do. As to whether that's the right way to go or the conclusive way to leaves much to be desired. Remember that if you have an issue of public perception and public image that needs to be repaired, yes, you can go about the route of being seen as the headmaster, the school teacher with the long cane, anybody that calls you out, you haul the person because you've got the power so to do, and then you use public hearings to, as we say in this our country, put the fear of God in that individual. You have that route. But you also have the route of making sure that you are dealing with the matter and dealing with it conclusively. And what would that include? That will include acknowledging that, look, there is a problem, and as an institution, we want to face the problem head on. We're not going to be waiting until there is another vetting for people to start throwing allegations, and this is where we are going to start the firefighting approach. But even in the absence of any vetting, even in the absence of any allegation, even in the absence of any supposed scandal, we as an institution of Parliament are willing to start a process towards understanding why this is so and towards remedying it. And I think that's what Parliament should be focusing on the more.
Do you think that apology fits or fixes the gap that Parliament sought to close in terms of the integrity that came under scrutiny? Did the apology just conclude the matter?
For me, the apology and the happenings of yesterday portrays a difference between facts, right? Exuberance, hiding behind social media to put out, information that may be factual, non-factual, half-truths, inaccurate, and also the role of the media, both new media and traditional media, in ensuring that we do not have a situation where we just put issues across and media picks it and does interesting story headlines around it just because we are looking for likes and hits and what have you.
Yeah.
I think that it portrays the need for responsible journalism, responsible participation in the social media space, but more importantly also responsible leadership on the side of duty bearers so that their actions, just like Speaker Babin said, will be what is courting the kind of respect and reputation that they are seeking, rather than, wanting to force it from the people.
Right. Please hold for me. We've been joined by lawyer Kofi Abochi, Dean of UPSA School of Law. And thank you so much, sir, for joining the conversation. Let me start by asking your initial reactions to what we saw yesterday. Oliver Barker-Vormawor being hauled before the appointment committee, the apology, and then the speaker's posturing. Give me an initial reaction, and then we'll get incisive with the conversation. If you can hear me, please unmute, sir. Okay, while we try to reconnect with lawyer Kofi Abochi, he's Dean of UPSA School of Law. I'm hoping that he can bring into the conversation the legal part of all of this. Do I have Mr. Kofi Abochi on? Right. Lawyer, thank you for joining us. I was saying, before we get incisive, what was your initial reaction to what we saw yesterday, the apology that Oliver Barker-Vormawor rendered to the appointment committee? It doesn't appear I have lawyer Kofi Abochi with me, so let me just continue with you, Mr. Obeng. As and when we have lawyer Kofi Abochi, we'll bring him into the conversation. So the Speaker of Parliament, Mr. Obeng, was saying that ideally it shouldn't be the appointment committee that take up that charge to haul before the committee Oliver Barker-Vormawor. What did you make of that?
Well, I'm not too sure that was exactly what the Speaker of Parliament intended with it on the floor. I think he spoke about procedure generally by the Appointments Committee and perhaps not specific about this one. Why am I saying this? I mean, the Appointments Committee, like I said, was very clear in their letter to Mr. Vormawor that they were inviting him under the constitutional provision of a witness appearing before a parliamentary committee and not as someone who is being charged for contempt. Right? That's the point. The second point is that the current parliament, the 9th parliament, does not have yet a privileges and immunities committee. It has not been set up yet. Remember that the only committees that had been set up just to be able to fast track some of the initial processes are the Committee on Selection, which is responsible for establishing the various other committees, the Business Committee of Parliament, which is responsible for setting the agenda for every sitting day, and then the Appointments Committee because of His Excellency the President's nominees. So there is no committee privileges and immunities. And for a matter to be referred to Committee on Privileges and Immunities, it must be a matter that has been officially brought to the attention of Mr. Speaker, and he makes that referral based on his decision sitting in the chair. And so at this point, the committee had not made any complaint. They had heard something, and within the remit of their own committee, they've invited a witness. Let's be minded and remember that now that Parliament Standing Orders requires that parliamentary committees are supposed to be sitting in the open, no longer in camera, unless perhaps the situation demands an in-camera sitting. We'll be seeing a lot more of these, where witnesses will be invited, not necessarily because of what they have said, but like I said from the beginning, to provide expert advice to the committee, to provide various perspectives and what have you. And that is the route in which they came. But Mr. Speaker's comment about the procedure and what the committee may not be doing right, for me, there are many, many great merits to that. The first one is that this is a committee that the Standing Orders of Parliament is very specific, that they must carry the public along. In so doing, they must invite memoranda from the public on the various nominees, ask people to bring in issues if they have issues, advertise this in media platforms of national circulation, and the call for memoranda, and give some time for people to submit. The committee has failed woefully in doing these. And you see, what that provides then is that the committee considers that as members of Parliament and members of the committee, they've got all of the questions and all of the issues around these nominees that they can ask at a vetting without necessarily involving the general public. And that is a smack at public participation in parliamentary work and parliamentary business. That is one of the lows. The second point Mr. Speaker raised is the issue of the posturing, the public show of the committee, the kind of impression that the committee is giving to the general public about their work. And that's where Mr. Speaker referred to the fact that respect must be earned and not necessarily demanded. So when you sit as a committee and what everybody sees, especially remembering that not everybody understands parliamentary procedures and processes, practices, the way you understand them as members of parliament. I would watch a parliamentary sitting and see a lot of filibustering or a lot of heckling, and I will not have any problem with it because it's an everyday parliamentary thing, and that's the everyday processes that I get involved with. But any other person will see these on TV and will be wondering, what are these people doing? And so a committee like that must be mindful about the fact that the public is watching, must be mindful and very interested in monitoring its work, evaluating its work on a daily basis, and seeking continuous improvement, in that every new day must be an improvement from what they have done from the previous day. We don't seem to mean that. And it appears that sometimes the committee does well, sometimes it does terribly, sometimes it does so abysmally, like how it chose to vet the Greater Accra Regional designate. Preposterous. And these are the kinds of things that
let me pause there for a second. Were they just tired, or what do you think happened there? What did we miss?
Well, I am unable to hold brief for them. I thought that they probably were tired and time was of the essence. But you see, a few days before, they had shown us what they could possibly do if they are hard pressed for time, that they could reschedule. In the case of the Minister for Gender, they rescheduled to the next day, they apologized to the chiefs and what have you. But in this case, the official reasoning, so to speak, that they gave was to come live at the committee's hearing and tell all of us that because the nominee came with, a bipartisan entourage of supporters from both the NPP and NDC and a number of revered chiefs, including past members of parliament who have become chiefs and what have you, and that he has a very solid base behind him, he should go and would hear from the committee. Right. I think this is a reason that would fuel, unfortunately, the wrong perception that people have about Parliament and parliamentary committees. Right. And members of Parliament must know that the work that they do when the lights and cameras are on will be what will be used in judging the integrity and reputation of Parliament. For those of us who work with parliamentary committees when they sit in camera, we know the kinds of great, amazing work that they do when the lights and cameras are not there, when they know that their party boys and girls are not watching them. They do some amazing work, and we expect that most of that to be translated when the lights and cameras are there. But this whole act of wanting to get sound bites and wanting to be hailed, among their party people as the MP that, took people on or did something intriguing, does not positively favor the reputation of the Parliament of Ghana. So
talking about what you describe as everyday parliamentary happenings, right? The ones that maybe we don't get to see. And also discussing parliamentary procedures and what should have been done and what not. Let's not forget that the crux of the matter is that there was allegation of bribery, right? To the best of your knowledge, is it a fact? In fact, I saw a post from Daniel Yaodumelovo. He was talking about how a former chair revealed that after Parliament completes, the vetting processes, the Chief of Staff sends some payments to the committee members, and whether or not that constitutes bribery. To the best of your knowledge, first, is it a fact that some people may be paying monies to fast-track their approval processes? And this thing that the former Attorney General is talking about, Yaodumelovo is talking about, where do we draw the line between bribery and just compensating the committee for doing a good job or just for the work done?
First of all, it is a fact that Manasseh has written in his book that former First Deputy Speaker Joe Wise says there were some amounts paid to them as committees from the Flagstaff House as a way of facilitating their work when their work was over. Secondly, it's the fact that I was on PM Express last night with Mr. Domilevo and Mr. Joseph Osei-Wusu, and he repeated the same thing, Mr. Osei-Wusu, that Flagstaff House brought the money, but this time around it was after the vettings were over as a way of appreciating the work that they had done. It is also a fact that the Speaker of Ghana's Parliament today, Speaker Babin, has actually, as the longest serving individual walking those corridors, indicated that bribes, there is corruption, so to speak, within the fold of Parliament. It is a fact that some members of Parliament themselves, including the current leader of government business, Mr. Mahama Yariga, and his colleagues, had in the past raised red flags, which caused a lot of chaos and commotion in this country. When you put all of these together, it provides a certain pattern. I have worked the Parliament of Ghana as a civil society activist, worked with different stakeholders. We've engaged parliamentary committees for years, well over a decade. I have never paid a bribe to members of Parliament and members of parliamentary committees, or I have not had specific instances of people demanding these things be paid before you met the parliamentary committee. So I may not have a personal knowledge, right, of these matters. But these are other issues that are in the public domain, which have not been denied, in fact, have been anchored by themselves as members of the public. It goes to fuel that public perception. And that is why I think that just like Speaker Babin, in his first term as Speaker, instituted a specific probe or research into how civil society can work effectively with Parliament, perhaps it is time that they initiated a process into why this public perception about members of parliament and parliamentary committees and what can be done. Make the findings known to us. Use the findings to be able to initiate internal reforms. The standing orders currently of Parliament provides for an ethics commissioner to be appointed, to be able to oversee some of these things, including an ethics committee. How are they rolling out all of these anti-corruption measures that Parliament itself is looking at? And how are they making these rollouts, investigations and its findings public so that we all know the processes that they are undertaking? It is a fact that governance institutions the world over, particularly in this part of our world, are facing a lot of decline when it comes to public trust. And Parliament is no exception. It is a fact. It's not just a Ghana problem. But any institution that recognizes this and wants to get out of that does take deliberate steps, which gets communicated, carries the citizenry along for the citizenry to know that we are trying to change the narrative. And remember that the Ghanaian people really do observe, really do see these things when they see a political group or class that is changing the narrative or intending to change the narrative. They recognize it and they would walk and go along with you. And that's what Parliament needs to be doing at this point.
Just to drive home the importance of what you just said about, public trust in this arm of government, what are the dangers when citizens, although you say it's not just Ghana, it's everywhere in Africa, what are the dangers that we face or the dangers that our democracy faces when citizens lose trust in the integrity of Parliament and parliamentary committees?
Let me give you an example that would resonate with us because it just happened a few days ago. When citizens lose trust in something, they disrespect that thing. And when they disrespect that thing and want to treat it with disdain, it first probably starts in their closets, and then eventually they'll bring it out in the open. And so, yes, you would find people now within the precincts of Parliament disrespect members of Parliament on the precincts of Parliament and ask them who they think they are, because in fact, they probably are not showing themselves as being what
I think the network got interrupted. Samuel being the Executive Director of Parliamentary Network of Africa, telling us or trying to drive home why it's important for parliaments to work to regain. Okay, he's back. Mr. Obeng, we lost you there for a second. Okay. He was just trying to reiterate why Parliament needs to do the work to regain trust of citizens and what dangers face our democracy if we don't take immediate, intentional and deliberate steps, words that he used, to sort of recover the image in terms of the integrity of Parliament and parliamentary committees. And he was giving us an example of something that happened a few days ago. And I don't know if it was going to go to that engagement we saw between MFI Hardcastle and Frank Anodompre and the exchanges that happened. He talked about disrespect as a reason, or some of the things that could happen if we don't respect Parliament and the integrity of these parliamentary committees. Hopefully I have Samuel being back with me. Yes, I do. I lost you there for a second.
Yes, that's just a simple example. Remember that we
lost the example. You mentioned something happened a few days ago, and I think I lost you from there.
So, yes, I was just making the point that, you see, when continuously citizens do not regard the institution of Parliament the way it needs to be regarded, it starts with disdain for the institution in their closets, and then eventually will translate into, public show of satisfaction and sometimes disrespect. In fact, there are some countries in this our continent, and Ghana is not there yet, and I pray we never get there, where members of Parliament, first of all, cannot easily walk around, in public places without security protection and things like that, because people are so angered that they come at. That is terrible, and we need not get there at all. We remember that there's been a time in this country where people got so upset with the institution of the police that people did some very terrible things like attacking police people in public and what have you. That's what, I mean, these things need to not be condoned, but I'm just pointing to the facts.
Oh, another interruption there. That's not a good sign. But do I still have Mr. Obeng with me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Did you land on the point? Because I wanted to go to ask you. I mean, at the core of it, the media plays a big role in whether or not we respect these institutions, these arms of government or not. Is it the case that we are only being shown, or we are only showing the negative things, like, the disrespect, the allegations of bribery and all these fighting and throwing chairs, or Parliament is actually not doing the good enough that we are showing both the good and the bad? What's happening there? What role is the media really playing in whether or not we respect these institutions?
Well, the media's role is significant, and it can have a very negative impact on the work of Parliament if we continue to have some of the very irresponsible journalism that some media houses practice. Let's use another case in point, which is fresh, which we can all relate to. Oliver Barker-Vormawor posts something on his status, right? A social media home, right? Which we are told from his testimony yesterday, picks what he has said and gives it a different headline. This time around, introducing the chairman, introducing NDC and NDC MPs on a certain NPP bureau platform. That's how new media can twist things, and then it will go viral. Then a media house, properly so-called, an online platform, now picks that twisted headline and makes it its own headline as though it is news. That's how irresponsible things can get if we allow these kinds of things to fester. So media has a role to play, but Parliament also has a role to play in all of this. I think that members of Parliament must remember first and foremost that everything they are doing in Parliament now, majority of these things will now be in the public domain. How in the public domain? It will be in the public domain because these things are live on TV, live on social media platforms, and now even worse of it, parliamentary committees are going to be open. And so we'll be watching. And the way you dress is the way you get addressed. So how they put themselves out there as members of Parliament would eventually show how, the people of Ghana would address them and address the institution of Parliament.
But why does it seem like we miss the good stuff? You mentioned that they do some fantastic work when the cameras are not on, when, the party boys and girls are not watching. How is it that we miss most of that?
Well, we miss it because typical of politicians, and I recall the election petition hearing in the Supreme Court, I think after the 2012 elections, where it was jokingly said that, and for those who understand Ghana, when the lights are on and people are in their political elements,
the
gbeshi in them, begins to show up.
Right.
I think that happens a lot when the lights and cameras are on, unfortunately. Members of Parliament must know. And you see, sometimes they think that the boisterous, the nature, the playing to the gallery nature, the theatrics is what Ghanaians are looking for. Let me give a classic example to show that is not it. Okay. One of the members of the minority side who has come up for praise during this verdict, I think most of you have mentioned it on various media platforms and it's being discussed on social media, is Honorable Patrick Yabuama.
Yes.
People are praising him for his calm demeanor, yet asking the relevant questions, yet posing the right things and ensuring that there is conversation that people can be able to relate to. If members of Parliament think that Ghanaians will not see through these things and will not speak and reward these things, then they are truly, truly mistaken. We do see through these things. And so it must not be business as usual. And this is also advice to the new members of parliament, so that when your caucus is asking you that, lift placards and march to "We are all involved" on the corridors of parliament and all of that, the media will not forget.
Yeah.
And your children and children's children and your constituents will refer you to these kinds of things and ask you whether these are the things that they asked you to come do in parliament.
So moving forward, but as we wind down on the conversation, how can we help? We as media, the media, and maybe I might extend to include civil society organizations, because sometimes they monitor and they hold these arms of governments to book. So how can we help, both media, civil society organizations, and regular citizens? How can we help?
On the side of the media, we must practice responsible journalism, good media practices. We must understand that as members of the Fourth Estate, we've got the power to make things great or make things terrible in this country. And various examples show to it. And so we must do our work and do it professionally. Those of us in civil society must perhaps also be supporting Parliament, not just calling them out, but also supporting them to be able to document some of the learnings and to be able to come up with ways in which they can do things better. At Parliamentary Network Africa, one of the things that we've been thinking, and perhaps at the tail end of this vetting process we may be doing, is how are we bringing various stakeholders together to be able to discuss how this first round of vettings had gone, after all 60 ministers designated have been vetted, because this committee is going to be doing a lot of work, including other forms of nominations. And how do we come up with the lessons learned, all the good and positive things, all the terrible things, document them into some form of a policy brief, submit to the Committee of Parliament so that it will inform their future work and future decision making. That's a way of evaluating, monitoring the work that Parliament does, and to be giving regular feedback to them to be able to improve their work. For us as members of the public, we've been talking about misinformation, disinformation,
right,
deepfake, what have you. All of these things have a way of affecting our governance structure if we continue to peddle these things. So we must be circumspect in what we must also be circumspect in what we expect from our members of parliament. If party people sit on the media platforms and always say that our MPs are not doing enough, as Chairman Ahiafo is behaving like he's so weak, he should put people, and it gets into the head of Chairman Ahiafo and he starts misbehaving, as chairman of the parliamentary committee, the ripple effect is that all of us will be affected. And so we must be gauged and measured by the kinds of expectation we have about political class, so that we don't lead them into the temptations that they get led into.
We will open the phone lines and also hear from the public. But my final question to you would be, what about the appointment committee themselves? From the very beginning, the questions about the competence of the chairman, the composure of the minority in that committee during the vetting processes and all that. How can they also, while we, proceed with the vetting of the remaining ministers, today I think they are vetting about 8 people, how can they also sort of clean up the image that they have out there, that they are either incompetent, wasting our time? How can they also sort of change the narrative now? I think you muted.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Appointments Committee is actually one of the committees that Parliament, by its new standing orders, has elevated to a very, very serious level. And what do I mean by that? In the past, the Committee on Appointments was just, a chairman who has always been the first deputy speaker, and about 25 other members of parliament. So there was no specific designation on who and who could join. In the new standing orders, of the 9 members who are supposed to be the statutory members of the Appointments Committee, 6 of them are direct leaders of parliament. First deputy speaker as chair, deputy majority leader as deputy vice chair, minority leader as ranking, and it goes on and on with the whips and all of that stated. There are only about 3 or so committees in parliament that gets that kind of status of putting leadership, packing leadership in there. One is the Business Committee of Parliament, which is responsible for setting the business or the agenda for the House every day, every week, and understandably so. You need the leaders to be able to set the agenda. One is the Committee on Selection, which is the committee responsible for selecting people to constitute the various committees, and you need leaders to be there. And then the Appointments Committee. So it's been elevated to a very, very high level, and they must play that role and give that kind of impression very, very well. Now, of the 11 members of the current Appointments Committee that was announced, 5 of them have been part of their
Okay, but we are going to open the phone lines, and while we reconnect with Samuel Bing for his concluding remarks, we're opening the phone lines for you. Call me. Let me hear your thoughts on what's happening. What did you make of that apology yesterday? The conversation so far. Do have your say. And I do want to find out from him before he goes. Hopefully, if we're able to reconnect with him, whether or he's back on. Please, you can conclude on that point for me, and then we can wrap it up.
Just to conclude and say that it all means that the Appointments Committee has experience on its side, unlike what we are being told. It has leadership on its side, and they just have to make sure that they are doing a few important things. Number one, the meeting before the meeting must be important. Those things that they do in conclave and agreeing on the structures and procedures, when they agree on those things in conclave, they must be able to abide by it as men and women of integrity and make sure that they are not catching themselves by surprise, they're not surprising each other, because when they do that, they create a very bad impression of their committee to the public. They must be firm. They must know and understand the importance of the work and tasks that they are performing for and on behalf of the people of Ghana, and must know that all that they are doing is not in some private room. They may be sitting in committee room 2 and 3 in Parliament, but the whole Ghana is watching them.
Right.
Millions of people are watching them, and they must discharge themselves appropriately. When they do that, I do not think that the chairman is, I have worked with Mr. Ayafor a few times on the Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs as a civil society organization that has engaged that committee on various bills that have been under the consideration of the committee. An amazing legislator who understands his work, who takes his work very, very seriously. I've known Mr. Afenyo-Markin and the work that he does, members of the committee, Mama Pat, Honorable Patrick Yabuama and co. They are great people in their individual rights, and just like the Black Stars, if they would allow their collective individual skills to put together into a team that can play well, we will not miss out on the African Cup. Talking about
Afenyo-Markin and sticking to agreements in conclave and all that, last question. Should they cap the number of questions that the ranking member can ask, a minister designates during the vetting process? Because it seems it goes on and on and on, and nobody can stop him, and we're all just waiting and counting the hours till he finishes. Should we cap it? What do you think?
I think that the Appointments Committee's procedure, and for me, this would be one of the recommendations probably coming out of this first round of Appointment Committee vettings for them to consider going forward. There should be time allocation, right, for all members rather than number of questions. So just like done in Parliament during State of the Nation address, debate on the State of the Nation address, or debate on budgets after it's been presented and members have to go into the debate, they are able to cluster the conversation and say that if you are a relatively junior member of Parliament on the committee, or during plenary, you have 5 minutes to make your submissions. If you are a senior, a front bencher, you have 10 minutes. If you are in leadership, you have 15 minutes. And the same can apply for the committee. In 10, 15 minutes, if you can ask 2 million questions, go ahead and do that with the nominee. Stop the nominee when the nominee does not want to answer your question. Then it's probably whiling away your time. But there should be a timer that is pointing you to how much more time you've got. And that's what we see in other jurisdictions. So that we know that, okay, if you are in leadership, it's 15 minutes. If in 15 minutes, Mr. Markins can ask 110 questions, why not? If in 5 minutes, other members of the committee who are not statutory members can ask, and if in 10 minutes, those who are subject matter experts who are joining the committee can ask their number of relevant questions, why not?
Right.
We should be moving towards the capping of the time rather than capping the number of questions that members of Parliament have to ask. And that will make it even more orderly.
Samuel Bing, thank you so much. He's Executive Director, Parliamentary Network Africa. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Pleasure always.
But I have Cornelius online with me, calling from Bogoso. Cornelius, good morning. You're live on the AM show. What are your thoughts?
So, actually, can I speak on another umbrella issue or just what we are discussing?
Go ahead, share your thoughts. Let's have your say. It's connected.
Yeah. So, I think 2 days ago, another umbrella was wild. He's annoyed for being called silly. Why? Why must he be so annoyed? Look, some time ago, he insulted President Mahama. And he was asked to apologize, and he refused. He refused to apologize. He said he will never apologize. Now you've gone to provoke somebody, and the person has called you. He didn't call him silly person. He just mentioned something related to silliness. And hey, you with equal pie, you are annoyed. Does he think he's the only person, he's the only politician in Ghana? Get this message to him. We are not afraid of him. We are not afraid of him. He should get his act together.
Cornelius,
Mahama, you refuse to apologize. Now somebody has called you silly and you are annoyed.
Cornelius, thank you so much for calling. But we have time for about 2 more calls, and then it will be a wrap. Have your say. We're talking about everything that happened in Parliament yesterday. I mean, even the days before, if it's connected, you can call us. We have Ganiu from Savannah region. Ganiu, good morning. You're on the AM show.
Yeah, sweetie, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. What's on your mind, Ganiu?
This is Abdul Ganiu calling you from Mankarugu, Savannah region.
Yes.
Toboya Mankarugu constituency. I think the issue of Anodonpre and MFA, I think it was a very big problem within the country. But sometimes we only see what's happening in public, but maybe indoors we don't see anything. So what I will just say is that maybe what Anodonpre did, it was on public that he wants people to know that, oh, this is what the so-and-so have done to me. You get that? But nobody says that. Another press says, oh, the woman insult him. That is why he said he should do this and that. No, it's only drawing the attention of Parliament to know what somebody did to him so that they can, if they can deal with that person, what is wrong with that? But the issue of Vormawor, you see, our good friend has disappointed us. We thought that he's going to the committee to put evidence on them in front of the members of the committee and say that this is my evidence. But he disappointed with those who were thinking that the man really have evidence of what he was saying, knowing that it was just a popularity to make people to think that it's true. But as of now, these things are telling us that we, the people who are always on social media, we should know how we can put our things across the media, put things on our platform, so that it won't get you into a big problem like what our good friend was yesterday. All of us was very disappointed.
Right.
As such a person who always think that we have things ever right, we have every right to say what he thinks is good for the country, not knowing that it's always allegations at this level. But let's leave him to see how things goes for the country. But I wish the minority in Parliament well. What is the name?
Abdul Ganiu, thank you so much for making your point and calling us. In fact, I was following the commentary on social media. Most people were, excited or were anxious to see how Oliver Barker-Vormawor was ascertained the veracity of his claims, whether or not he had evidence that, the appointment committee members were taking bribes. And so for him to show up and apologize, it's almost as if they were disappointed. But also on the issue about MFA, Hardcastle versus Anodonpre, I think that yesterday I would say Ben and I were both saying that we wanted to see all angles before we made any comments. And, well, Ahmed Kumasi calls me. I'll continue my thoughts after. Ahmed, calling us from Kumasi. Good morning.
Yes, please. Yesterday I was very, very disappointed with what happened in Parliament because we thought the guy is coming to produce evidence. As a lawyer, he's such a... So we were expecting that he should come boldly and defend. But, Charlie, I'm very, very disappointed. And secondly, I'm alarmed as a media house. You people are questioning why the minority leader is asking so many questions. That is their responsibility to ask the personnel who is coming for the vetting. But the media houses are rather complaining that he's asking so many questions. We should rather encourage him to ask them more tangible questions. But the media houses, I'm shocked this morning. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for calling. Right. So I just wanted to say that if you want to chastise MFA Hardcastle for what she did, go ahead. I mean, we're all entitled to opinions. But to say that because she's a woman, she shouldn't have done that, I don't see how that's an argument you can make. So when the men do it, it's okay. But when a woman does it, you take exception to it. Let's judge everyone because they're human beings in their capacity of whatever role they're playing in that place, rather than because she's a woman or she's a man. Emmanuel is calling us from the Upper East region. Emmanuel, good morning.
We lost everything. And
we
so
did.
I am saying, like, if we can be the prodigal son in the Bible, I think it will help Ghana. We should go back to our masters and tell them that we are sorry, we failed.
What are you talking about? Hello? Emmanuel, I can hear you. What are you talking about? You said we lost everything. What are you talking about? Oh, I think I just lost Emmanuel. I wanted to find out what exactly he's talking about when he said we've lost everything. But folks, thank you so much for calling. I don't have any other caller yet, so that will be a wrap for... Oh, we have one last caller. Randy. Randy, good morning. Where are you calling from? Randy, good morning. Where are you calling from?
Yeah, good morning. I'm doing well. I'm calling from Accra here.
Okay, Randy, have your say.
9 discussions so far. I just want to touch on Honorable Anodom Press situation and what transpired with the lady. To be frank, it's like we are not taking into cognizance the attitude of Anodom Press himself, Honorable, vis-a-vis his past utterances towards other people. You are called silly, and then you are crying foul. When you call other people by harsh words and you are asked to withdraw, you refuse to do so. You see, and we are entertaining this, and we are taking the woman's defense as if she was being rude or uncultured towards another prey. You provoke someone, and the person retaliates, even very, very calmly, and call you a silly person. You are angry, and the whole parliament has chastised the lady as if she got it wrong. Speaking, we can say she reacted on camera wrongly, but probably she may have also been provoked by the Honorable, because looking at other perspective of the conversation, we are told Anodom Pre had approached the other side to inform them they were not going to continue with the vetting. So it was at that particular time that the lady felt probably his antics over there was not proper, and probably may have degenerated. What happened between the two of them is nothing for the caliber of Anodom Pre to be complaining as if somebody had used unprintable words towards him. I feel the Honorable should be guided. His ways and his actions, how he talks to people. When he's giving a tip of that iceberg, he should be able to take it. He's a politician. And this thing about crucifying the lady, I feel, to be frank, it's been overstretched.
Right. Thank you so much for calling and sharing your thoughts with us. Well. So let's put a pin in it now. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue the conversation. You can still call in after the break. And then later on, we'll take you to Parliament because the vetting continues today. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.